Okay, tonight I have the honor to introduce Leo Lass. He's been with me for many, many years. We've cooperated many times in Schmiede before. Right now he's doing a lot of VR work for Ars Electronica, and he's been a part of Deep Art ever since. So please take it away.
Thanks, Rüdiger. Thanks a lot for having me. This place is very special to me because actually the last time I was standing here, I was graduating from the FH Salzburg that was situated right over there, and I was living there for 2 very important years of my life. It's also where both of my careers started, both my artistic career and my career as a designer. And it's also where I met the people I still work with today. Today, I'm Leonhard Lass. I have a dark and a bright side, like the moon. On the one hand, 24 years ago, I've counted, I founded Deep Art together with the musician and artist Gregor Ladenhauf, where we engage in audiovisual installation in general, but more to that later. On the other hand, I have co-founded IndieView that engages in very complex interfaces that are used in operation control rooms, that are placed in critical infrastructure and in safety critical environments. Those 2 guys here, for instance, they control hydroelectric power plants. And the left one, Philip, is in control of the whole river of Danube. And his interfaces, consisting of 14 screens, has an impact of 180,000 data points. So on this side, I really deal with data-heavy interfaces. I talk to data scientists and process engineers, and our users are usually operators that are part of a very sophisticated operation. And before I get tested some kind of schizophrenia, and rest assured, I struggled for a long time to figure out why I actually needed both. And I tried to just pick the art world or to just pick the design world, and it didn't work for me. And perhaps the reason is because they both deal with computational complexities. And I think because complexity is in itself a complex topic, it needs more than one perspective to it. Let's look at this one example. So it's an example from Philip, the operator, operating the Danube. This very innocent looking symbol here is one of the tiny process symbols representing a machine. And this machine is what you see in the right picture. So it's this massive structure that is embedded in tons of concrete, actually situated 20 meters below the water level of the river Danube. And this is partly responsible for producing the energy for the city that I live in. And I find that very intriguing. But what we also, of course, see here is this huge level of abstraction that is required, this simplification that allows us to manage this complexity. And the cool thing in art is we do not have to manage anything. We do not have to make anything understood. We do not have to produce meaning. We are fine with dwelling in the unknown. And I think both are valid. So while on the bright side, I deal with clarity, I deal with control. On the dark side, I deal with ambiguity. I deal with glitches. I deal with everything that loses control and that goes into the realm maybe of the poetic. And this is maybe what I just showed you is an expression of what technology experience today is mostly like. It can be said that we live in a black box society. We are stacking black boxes upon black boxes to make our technology manageable. And as this beautiful woman here in this picture by the name of Pandora does, I have the feeling that it is a core responsibility of everybody actually, but especially of artists, to tear these black boxes open again and again and see what comes out of it. Also to kind of challenge the demons that might be inside and see how we can cope with them. But there's a lot of things that will be lost in this process, that underlying obscure process. And also, as note, Pandora was not actually opening a box. She was opening a jar, but it was lost in translation. And this brings me back to the very roots. Actually, this can be placed a few hundred meters over there. And this sticker speaks still very well about the core endeavor of the part of my artistic, let's say, modus operandi. It's poetry. We are very interested in play with languages. We're interested in bringing different media together in one object, create these hybrid objects. We are also interested in ambiguity, in things that are several things at once. One thing that you also see in this picture is you see an organism that has responded to a stimulus. Something has happened, something maybe unexpected, and an accident has happened, and a new form was emerging. Today we speak about this computational modus operandi in terms of hyperpoetics and the algorithmic. So we create or investigate these multimodal audiovisual languages that are able to span these huge spaces of meaning that are very condensed and hypertextual. For that, we create real-time generated worlds that are simulated, dynamic systems that have a kind of an autonomy and that somehow challenge all the authority of the artist, of ourselves. Our narratives, and we are always asked about narratives. We do not tell a pre-end story, but we are much more interested in this accumulation of potentials that can, in cyclic eruptions, maybe create new situations. Dwell on this analogy of the tree a bit longer, because it's a very interesting one. The first picture goes back to the very beginning of information graphics. It's by Ramon Llull, in this case, the tree of sciences. So the tree helped picture and sort out our thoughts, bring them in relation to each other, make them categorizable and show some hierarchy. The tree has grown maybe into a forest right now. The tree structures are everywhere. The one that you see here is decision tree, in this case from jazz movements, but it's also very common in all kind of game logics. The one underneath me you probably might recognize is a state machine. Finite state machines are used also in computer games to show the relations between state of an object. And here we already have a shift from just a categorization into some kind of a flow dynamics, data flows. What you see in the center, that is not playing, and I know why, should be a time lapse of a personal knowledge graph. So you see it here maybe in the beginning, new structures emerge eventually that show you the clusters of where your interest lies, what topic relates to what topic. And there's this idea that we have with persons, this few degrees of separation, that through a few connections we know everybody in the world. And I think that's generally true for everything that we have, for every concept. We can find a nearest neighbor, we can find the closest path to this object. And then the very bottom, you just see a diagrammatic sketch also of one of our works that shows the interconnections of all the systems that are at play. Okay, if you look back again to this first picture that I showed, it's almost looking naive in a way, because it's a hybrid. And again, you already know how much I like hybrids, because it draws from two realms. On the one hand, it's the illustration of an actual tree. Only on the second glimpse, you notice that it's also a diagram. And I think this is very interesting, that can span two worlds with one object. And we tried to explore this trajectory in a work called The Entropy Garden. It's a virtual reality world-like world that's inhabited by these plant-like structures. But it's all in real time, it's all generated. So you come to this world and it will all be different. And in this case, this world observes itself. And in cyclic frequencies, it starts to bring up or tell these haikus. The haiku, as you all know, is a lyrical form, very precise one, that is very much grounded in natural observation. But it also has this aspect of bringing together opposites. And what you see here is both a haiku, a language format, a diagram of this little poem, and also one of these organisms that inhabit this world.
I've missed the moment when outside became inside. Two birds with one stone. A crystal whisper, ambushes in glass houses, only a stone's throw away. Why are you waiting? What are you waiting for? There is only now.
while working on the entropy garden, we dwelt a lot on this analogy of the artist gardener. I think there is a lot of actual proximity between the artist, the generative artist, and the gardener. If you think about, we first thought about what do we actually want from a garden? What are the philosophy to construct a garden as an artwork? The gardener works with a living material, a material that has some kind of autonomy. And he accepts that his design decisions can never be fully expressed, because it's in the interplay of elements. There are other systems working on it. And of course, the plant itself has some kind of autonomy. But if he decides on any kind of design rule, he also needs these agents that enforce them. And there are several philosophies that we find, and the most distinct ones I've showed here. The first would be the French gardening tradition, where we could say it's like a portrait of man, of the dominance of man or woman over nature. The Japanese decision is completely different. It's more like a homage to nature. And it tries to maybe distill some kind of an essence of nature with its own material. And what you also see depicted here is how these agents are integrated in this system. So if we think about, we need control structures to uphold our design guidance. In this case, we are supposed to neglect them. We just should ignore them. They are mere workers. They shouldn't be there at all, right? So they are not dressed anywhere special. They are in the working class. And the designer is long gone anyway, but he sits in his high chair. On the other hand, we have the Japanese tradition that has this very strong integration of the guys that uphold it, the Zen monks. Think about the Zen monks that have made it their daily ritual as automation to shape and keep the shape of this garden. And therefore, they are, of course, connected. They are an integral part of it, and they also can connect back to this garden. So the entropy garden is a sprawling, continuous simulation.
When I leak focus, my gaze tumbles through brushwood, forests stuffed with night.
Heave high the fences, but keep the garden low. Extending yourself into the realms of others. Don't lose that fire.
Tectonic tactics, breaths at the speed of mountains, half here, half nowhere.
a work that was created in virtual reality. And what we really like about this is how you can create a sense of place, a place that has a character. You can visit this place, and because it's a dynamic simulation, this place will always be kind of different. You cannot enter the same place twice. And VR is a very special medium in many senses. I think it might not be ready for mainstream adoption yet, but it was so persistent, and it has tried so many times, and I think this time it's still here to stay, although in a niche maybe. But for artists, it's very special, because it has one aspect that no other media has, because it allows you almost total immersion. And once you put on your headset, everything else is gone. As an artist, you have full control over the whole field of view of your audience. And you get that nowhere else. You cannot even consult your most favorite second screen anymore. It's all that is there is the virtual, right? But it's not the whole truth. Because with this absolute immersion, almost without a choice comes also an exmersion. So if you look at people having the headset on, how they act, how they look, right? They are these masked people engaging with a word. They seem like possessed by something other, by some kind of a different reality that we cannot be part of. But the body is still there, right? Like left behind. And we can see this strange detached performance of the body that has a mind somewhere else. And we like that a lot, this thinking about using the interface as a gate to a new world. And the digital in general, it always manifests itself at the border, the interface or the screen. And we love that. We really, our work explores exactly these thresholds. We position our works exactly in these, let's say, transitory zones, in these twilight zones, in these uncanny valleys. It's what we aim out for. And there is this topic or the term liminality from the ritual studies that explains this threshold state, a state where everything seems possible, where no connection is yet determined, and where you can, through, I think, manipulation of symbols, by coincidence of events, and by short-circuiting of meanings, create those new connections. Think about it almost like a state of dreams, where things fall together and all of a sudden something happens to your brain. And as world builders, we create these magic circles, and the magic circle is also a term from game theory in this case, coined by Johann Huizinga. And Johann Huizinga said something that was amazingly impactful when I first heard it. He said, there is no difference between play and ritual. The sacred space and the playground are formally indistinguishable. And I love that. So he describes this magic circle that is a temporary world within the actual world, which has all of a sudden a different rule set. The usual rules don't apply here anymore. So like the tennis court, the court of law, the temple, the arena, the stage would all be in fact, in function and form, be playgrounds. And this allows us some very absurd analogies with still the knowledge that we can keep a formal consistency. And speaking about these absurd analogies, one core aspect of our work is always an embedding, a contextual embedding. And when we were asked to provide a work, to create a work for the main square in Linz, we noticed something. We noticed the proximity in formal aesthetics of two, I think, very iconic aspects of the character of Linz. On the outskirts of Linz, you see these huge smoke columns coming from its iconic industries, the steel industry. In the very center of the city, you see this column of clouds, the Pestsäule, the black column. And this black column especially is an interesting object because it's an object with an inherent conflict. We look at clouds, something very intangible, hewn in stone, right? So it's this conflict of lightness and heaviness, of this physical materiality and heaviness against something that we cannot be touched and might not even see it. What this also is a monument for survived or overcome in the midst of COVID-19, when this also happened. All of a sudden, this became so relevant again, to be able that all of a sudden the intangible, like our breath, had grave implications. And our mass media struggled to find representations and manifestation of this invisible force that all of a sudden is all around us but cannot be seen. And we are bombarded with these strange visualizations all the time that also bear a lot of resemblance to what we see here, that were ranging from the absurd to the beautiful to the uncanny. And we took inspiration on that. Yes, and so on. And what we devised or what we created was a work based on the rhythm of breath that uses gas simulations to construct its form. So it's also based on simulations. And the forms that are created are completely shape-shifting between aggregate states all the time. There's no standstill. we like to show this interplay of the moment and the monument, so the momentary and the monumental. Yeah, what you also see in the very right is how it actually worked. It was really like a dialogue. There's the actual Pestsäule, the Blake column, and there on this Brückenkopfgebäude, you see this 16-meter high projection, and they were in constant dialogue. So this was a synchronized performance that happened a couple of times during the night. And at the Pestsäule, we used some light and a lot of smoke or fog to activate it, and this was a synchronized interplay of those two forms. So we had what we had inside also in reality with this difference or this conflict of the real physicality and the virtual. And in the end, it's always about the human condition. I think in our last work, the subject changes, we also deal a lot with these expressions of corporality, of simulation and of unsteadiness. These kind of, yes, untriggered potentials that are lying around everywhere. In this world, the Entropy Gardens, we focused on the character and how a ritualistic behavior in an unsteady and unsettled world could actually look like. So you have this endless simulation of this obscure character in a completely erratic world, it seems. And you watch this character, how it transforms all the time. His body becomes like an aesthetically coded artifact. He performs strange and obscure rituals, and you think he's engaged in some kind of non-discernible tasks. You also notice that this world is sometimes very hostile to this character. So almost like a modern Sisyphus, he seems to be engaged in some kind of ongoing struggle to even survive in this world. And if we ourselves transfer ourselves daily as, let's say, images or representations into this digital world as avatars and interact with other avatars and other representations, we blindly accept also the rules of these environments that we are enacting in. We accept this gaze, of our obscured audience that is also sometimes an algorithmical gaze. And very often for us, this cannot really be fathomed because we have constructed machinery, we have constructed technology that on the surface is so simple, it's so convenient, but we cannot really understand it anymore. Even the most common thing is actually too much for a single person to fully understand. And as I said initially, there are these black boxes, and the artist is maybe one of those guys that should open those black boxes. And I think this exactly places the computer at the center stage of this endeavor, because the computer is, I think, the only medium that is able to portray this complexity, which is able to kind of unlock the potential also of these systems. And I think we require an art form that is like the world we live in. It's complex, it's manifold, it's fragmented, it's time agnostic, it's glitchy, and so on. And in the end, we rest assured, because it's a deterministic machine, that everything still can be connected. Thank you very much.